Curious about what Huberman and Galpin shared in their nearly 5-hour-long conversation? Well, I've taken all the notes and this video is for you. I'll cover all the protocols Galpin shared for increasing strength and power. How to choose the right weight to work on strength or power. This comes down to a percentage of your 1 rep max. Your 1 rep max is the maximum amount of weight you can lift for a single repetition of a movement. If you're training for power, you want to work with a moderate load, generally between 30 to 70% of your 1 rep max. The focus here is on moving the weight as quickly as possible. The idea is to generate maximum power by moving the weight or your body quickly. If you're training for strength, you need to use heavier loads, 70% or more of your 1 rep max. Lifting with a lower percentage won't significantly improve your strength, because the weight isn't heavy enough to stimulate the necessary adaptations. For those who are moderately or highly trained, load should be above 70% of their 1 rep max. And how should you go about sets and reps? To guide your training, you can refer to the Prilepin chart. This chart outlines the optimal number of reps and sets at different intensities to maximize strength gains without overtraining. For example, when lifting at 90% or more of your 1 rep max, the chart suggests only 1 to 2 reps per set, with a total amount of 7 reps. This approach balances specificity, which is training at the exact load needed to improve strength, with avoiding injury and overuse by spending enough time in lower intensity for skill and tissue tolerance. An easy way to remember this is the 3 to 5 technique. Do 3 to 5 exercises, 3 to 5 sets per exercise, each 3 to 5 reps, and rest 3 to 5 minutes between sets. For strength, you can do 3 to 20 sets per workout, depending on your goals. And after your training, if you want to do more work, like hypertrophy or cardio, just be mindful that it can cause fatigue and require more recovery between your workout. If your focus is to maximize strength, avoid fatiguing activities because they can compromise your ability to lift with maximum intensity. For example, supersets can cut training time, but they can also reduce strength gains by about 5%. So that's your trade-off if you want to do that. Power training, on the other hand, can often be done more frequently, even multiple times a day, as long as the exercises are less taxing and the volume is managed. High-stress activities like maximum sprinting require more recovery time because of the risk of injury, especially the hamstrings. Let's talk about exercise selection. When training for strength, focus on compound exercises that involve multiple joints. Think about movements rather than individual muscle groups. For example, rather than thinking about training chest or hamstrings specifically, consider movement patterns like upper and lower body push and pull. These make up 4 different categories, and then additionally, add a rotational movement to this. So, if you're using the 3 to 5 method, then pick one from each of these categories and pick one rotation. For power training, effective exercises are plyometrics, vertical jump, medicine ball throws, short sprints, and weightlifting movements like snatches and clean and jerks. Also, clapping push-ups, speed squats, and kettlebell swings are great options. The key to maximizing power development is to always aim to move as fast as possible during these exercises. And of course, you want to always be in control and safe during the exercise while moving fast. Let's talk about the order of your exercises in a workout. Start with your strength and power exercises when you're freshest, because these movements are neurologically demanding. Doing them when you're fatigued will reduce your ability to execute them with maximum speed and power, which compromises the quality of your training. Avoid doing cardio or high-rep fatiguing exercises before your main lifts. The focus should be on the quality, not quantity. Let's talk about progression and frequency. For strengths, if you're pushing for maximum gains, you probably need a few days between your sessions to recover. However, speed and power can be trained almost every day, as long as you are not doing maximum speed sprinting every day. Progression in strength and power training is usually done by increasing intensity 3 to 5% per week, and also increasing volume up to 5% per week. This should continue about 5 to 8 weeks, followed by a deload week to allow for recovery. For power, as long as you are working within 30 to 70% range of your 1 rep max and focusing on moving explosively, you are on track. Before discussing tempo in a strength training, let's quickly cover two important terms: concentric and eccentric. These are both phases of a movement. The concentric phase is when your muscles shorten when they work, such as when you lift a barbell in a deadlift or push it up in a bench press. This is when you are working against gravity or cable tension. The eccentric phase is when your muscles lengthen under tension, like when you are lowering the barbell back to the ground in a deadlift or bring it down to your chest in a bench press. A common tempo used in a strength training and also even in hypertrophy is 3-1-1 tempo. This means taking 3 seconds for the eccentric phase, pausing 1 second to ensure control, and then doing concentric phase as quickly as possible. For example, during a bench press, you would lower the bar to your chest over 3 seconds, pause briefly for 1 second, and then push it up in 1 second. In exercises like rows, where the movement starts with the concentric phase, you would pull the bar to your chest as fast as you can under control. Hold for 1 second, and then take 3 seconds to lower it back down. Make sure to learn the Valsalva technique for breathing, which is crucial for maintaining core stability during your heavy lifts. Let's talk about warm-up. When training for strength and power, being fully warmed up and ready to perform at your best is essential before starting any working sets. Begin with 5 to 7 minutes of general warm-up to get your body primed, followed by dynamic movements to prepare your muscles and joints. Remember, when you're training for strength, anything below 70% of your 1 rep max is considered a part of your warm-up and is not a working set. So ensure you're hitting those heavier loads when it is time to work on your strengths. Let's talk about what you can do between sets when training for strength and power. If you have noticed, power lifters and weightlifters often sit down and remain still. This is because they need neurological recovery, which takes longer than muscular recovery. They aren't physically exhausted, but they need to let their nervous system reset before the next heavy lift. Static stretching before exercise can reduce your maximum power output. However, if you feel tight and you need to stretch to get into the correct position for a lift, it is fine to do that. Even if it means sacrificing a small amount of power, it's important to avoid injury. If you do static stretching and you want to minimize any power loss, you can reactivate your muscles. This is done by something explosive, like a vertical jump before your working set. Let's talk about advanced techniques for gaining strength. Doing only the eccentric phase is also called doing the negatives, can be a powerful tool if you cannot do 1 rep of a movement. For example, if you don't have the strength to do 1 pull-up, you can jump into it and then lower yourself in a controlled way. This will help you build the strength needed to do the pull-up. Similar to this, eccentric overload training is an advanced technique and it should be done with the help of a spotter only. This method loads the muscles with more weight than your 1 rep max and focuses solely on the eccentric or lowering part of the movement. Muscles are naturally stronger during the eccentric phase than the concentric or lifting phase, which is why this method works. For example, if your 1 rep max for a bench press is 200 pounds, you might be able to load the bar with 220 pounds for the eccentric overload training. You would then slowly and under control lower the bar with 220 pounds to your chest. Since you cannot press that back up, A spotter will help you return the bar. And then you repeat this eccentric lowering. This technique allows you to train with weights greater than your 1 rep max. Another advanced technique is doing cluster sets. In this method, you take short breaks, 5 to 10 seconds, between each rep in a set, instead of doing all of them together. For example, in a set of 5 squats, you would do 1 rep, rack the bar, rest 10 seconds, and then do the next rep. This method helps you reduce the fatigue, so you can do heavier weights throughout the set, and each rep is done with higher quality. Cluster sets are especially effective for building strength, power, and hypertrophy, and they work well with exercises like deadlifts. You can use this technique as a primary training strategy or only for your main lifts to ensure every rep is executed with maximum power. I've made other videos of Huberman Lab podcast and his guest series where Galpin talks about hypertrophy protocols. If this is something that interests you, subscribe and follow along. And before you go, one last note if you're a woman. If you want to understand and optimize training around your menstrual cycle, you don't need to, but if you'd like to know, a useful tool is the Rhythm Plus 30-day test. This is taking salivary samples every day throughout the menstrual cycle to track your hormonal changes. Overall, the timing within the menstrual cycle doesn't significantly affect strength training or your 1 rep max. But being on birth control can influence these results. If you enjoyed this video, give this a thumbs up and I see you in the next one.